This is Referee's World with Darren Cullum and Richard Mellin.
Hello again and welcome to the Referee's World podcast, which offers education and training for football referees of all levels. You can listen to our weekly podcasts, which are available every Friday night from 5 o'clock by subscribing on the website or searching Spotify and Apple Podcasts. My name's Darren Cullum. I'm a level 5 referee with Somerset FA. And my mentor, my tutor, my hero in all things to do with refereeing is the one, the only, Richard Mellin.
Yeah, hi Darren. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very well. Here we are again, another episode. You're at home on Skype and I'm here in the studio. And we're going to pick up where we left off in the last episode with former refereeing legend on the Premier League, Lee Probert, who hopefully is still there. Lee?
Yep, still here, Darren. Finished my nails again, so we're on course.
People that are just switching in for the first time are going to start worrying about you. Who is this Lee Probert who keeps on talking about his nails? But anyway, let's get straight into it, our next 20-minute segment here. And we're going to hand over to Rich at this point because you particularly want to know about this first game on the Football League, Rich, in Northampton when the temperature was very high. So over to you.
Yeah, it was one of those days that it was... my career had already finished on the national list. So consequently, I took an interest by invitation from Lee to sort of give a little bit of feedback on stuff. But on this particular occasion, I couldn't go to his first Football League middle, which was Northampton versus Torquay. But Lee will give you the story. But I clearly remember it, that first Saturday in August. It was a blistering hot day. From there, I'll just hand over to Lee. Lee, give us the lowdown on the game itself, the observer, the comments the observer made, etc., etc. Not necessarily anything to do with your performance, but the whole environment and the whole setup, because it was an unbelievable sort of, debut in that situation.
Yeah, it certainly was. Firstly, thanks, Darren Rich, for having me back. It is nice. And it was 116 degrees, Northampton, Torquay. I remember it well. I took my dad. You couldn't come, so my dad came over from the island, stayed with us the night before, and we travelled up in the morning. So, it was the day that Rich couldn't come, so I took my dad. My dad came over from the Isle of Wight, and he was a massive supporter of what I did. My dad, I mean, I don't think I would be where I am, where I was, and what I achieved without the support of my dad and my mum and a close family. But the best thing was we got there, it was 116 degrees pitch side, and I don't know what it is about the opening day of the season, but it always seems to be the most hottest day of the year. And we get in and we meet the team and everyone's all milling around and I'm all excited because it's my first ever Football League game. And it's like, oh, come on, let's just make sure everything's okay. And I'm sort of right up big. So we decided it was so hot in the dressing room, we'd go outside and I'd do my pre-match instructions outside. And the sprinklers started to go off. And I sort of said, right, okay, come on, lads, we'll get off the pitch now because the grounds are going to put the sprinklers on. So I decided to do my pre-match pitch side. So it was me, fourth official, 2 assistants and the observer. And whilst I was halfway through it, I was literally oblivious to what was going on around me. The sprinklers decided to turn and literally come right over the top of all of us. The whole team was drenched. And you know what? I was oblivious to like the sprinklers were going and I'm still chatting about my pre-match and it's like, oh Lee, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's like the most important decisions that you got to make is to make sure you get the messages to your assistants about what you want because it's your first game. And I've got water sprinklers going off. I've got everything going off. So the observer said to me afterwards, Lee, he said, before we get into the game, he said, is there anything you'd probably change pre-match? And I said, yeah, to be honest, there probably is. I said, I'll either do my pre-match in a dressing room where we're not going to have to worry about sprinklers going off because we were drenched.
Yeah, but on a hot day like that, it was probably quite refreshing. And when you look back on it, what a great little story to have on your first game as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look back, I can't remember anything about the game. All I can remember was the sprinklers. So if anyone says, "What's your first game like?" 116 degrees, because I can remember the thermometer down the side and just water sprinklers, and the observer saying, "Lee, in future, do your pre-match instructions inside. Everyone sat down, and we haven't got to worry about sprinklers going off. So yeah, that was a story that Rich always likes. He dines out on that one.
I do.
That is a great story. I love stuff like that.
It's one of those firsts, you know. That was Lee's first medal. Well, I think every referee will remember their first, whatever it may be. First cup final, first game, first sending off, everything. We all have a first that, sits in there, and that's one of them for me.
I think the biggest learning curve out of that one, Darren, is when you are going to give pre-match instructions messages, find somewhere where it's quiet, where there's just either the three or the four of you, because they're the messages that you're going to want out of your assistant referees, your fourth official if you're lucky enough to have one. But that then sets the message of how you're going to go about your game and how you want to referee that game. And like you say, if you don't get your pre-match instructions right, then who knows what's going to happen.
So that 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or however long your pre-match would be is actually probably the most important section of your day on match day, isn't it, really?
Most definitely. I mean, you don't want to go on too long.
I was going to say, what sort of length of... how long do you go for, baby?
Well...
sorry, I couldn't resist that one.
It's one of those that I was quite lucky that I had Andy Garrett and Simon Beck with me for majority of my games. So what do you tell two guys that have been on the list for so long and who I knew had my back, would look after me, and I'd do the same for them, and we would run through brick walls for each other. So I didn't need to go into chapter and verse about how I'm going to do this. All we spoke about is making sure that we got the big decisions right, and we never went against each other. Because I think if you start going against each other, it then leaves a little door open for players to go, well, you don't even know what you're doing, ref. The assistant doesn't know what he's doing, ref. It just builds a gap between that teamwork of referee and assistant, which without those two, it's a lonely place. And those referees that haven't got assistant referees week in, week out will know how lonely it is out on that field of play.
Lee, what's the skill factor in making sure that you don't go opposite the assistant referee?
I mean, the biggest thing you and I have talked about was eye contact. You've got to know, you've got to get the eye contact before you make a decision. You've got to be looking for if you're an assistant referee, and I wasn't the best, and I didn't really enjoy it.
That was an evil laugh. That was a really evil laugh.
I didn't really enjoy running. I don't know what it was. Assistant refereeing is an art. And I have to say, the quality that we've got on the Premier League, the decision making that they make, those offside split decisions, those crossovers, credit to the lads, because the speed of the game, the movement, I didn't have that, unfortunately. I sort of was more wanting to run around that middle bit. So it is a case of making sure that eye contact is the biggest thing from assistants. So before you raise that flag, have a look where the referee is, get eye contact. Is he going to go left? Is he going to go right? Is he going to go corner? Is he going to go goal kick? Just follow his lead without not making a decision that makes sense. You still got to assist if you're assistant refereeing, but what you don't want to be doing is waving a flag and letting everybody know you're there, especially if it's a wrong decision.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. It's just the basics. It's always about doing the basics. The lads that we look after around here in the southwest, Josh Tobin will be listening, Rob McDonald will be listening. They all understand when they're on the scene, if they do the basics well, everything else will start slotting into place as well. So this is where the learning part of their career is. Those early days, those firsts that they're experiencing at the moment. And I can't emphasize it enough to all our listeners about doing the basics well. Don't be pedantic, don't be officious, don't be fussy, but learn how to do the basics well. Everything else will hopefully just start to slot into space. Into pace, sorry.
I think, Rich, at the end of the day, if you keep everything simple, because the more you complicate it, the harder it becomes. Yeah. So you don't want to be rushing a decision. but you don't want to be taking forever to make it. So
Sure. There's
a time where you go, that's a throw in, that's everyone's happy. That's a foul. Oh, is it? Can I play advantage? Oh, no, I can't. It's keeping the basics and keeping it simple, because, like I say, the more you complicate it, the harder it is. You mentioned Ron McDonald. I mean, he spent at St George's Park a lot of time with Andy Garrett, because Andy Garrett was doing some excellent assistant refereeing drills, and I know that Rob spoke highly of Andy, and Andy is a fantastic assistant referee who never made it to FIFA. Why? Who only knows? But has done every final and 4 decades on the Premier League. So to have someone of his experience and Rob pumping into him saying, how can I hold the flag? How do I run this way? It's all about the basics.
Yeah, definitely. It is definitely that. Okay, let's go on to a little bit further into your career, Lee. Just let's just have a few dates in here. When did you first get to the Football League middle?
I'm going to say 2000. You know I'm no good with dates, Rich.
I know roughly.
You probably know better than me. I'm going to say 2003.
Okay, 2002/3, I think it was.
Okay, I knew you'd know.
Rich, you're so pedantic, mate, honestly.
It's not intentional. I just want people to get an idea. How old were you, Lee, when you got there?
Well, if I'm 48 now... Now, listen, I don't mind coming on the podcast. I'm not doing mastermind. I'm not doing countdown. Stop making these questions difficult.
I don't do sums.
I must have been, I don't know, 20...
Late 20s, weren't you?
Late 20s, yeah. Let's keep this simple. Let's not complicate it. Late 20s.
Late 20s. I mean, what I'm trying to get for those listeners there is a perspective of where you started, when you started, and when you got to Football League as regards the career path. You know, There are a lot of people out there that aspire to be a Football League official, Premier League official, FIFA official, who knows where they might go. But if they get an idea of timings and things and everything else, whilst yours is not set in stone, it is an example of how quickly you might be able to progress once things start slotting into place. 2002/3, I think it was, that game at Northampton. And if someone looks it up on Google, they could probably correct us if we're wrong. When did you get to your first Premier League game?
That was easy. That's 2007.
Okay. Where was it? Where did you go?
Well, I had a couple of trial games. Keith Hackett was the general manager at the time, and I had a couple of trial games. The first trial game I did Sheffield United Portsmouth.
When you say trial game, do you mean development games?
Yeah, the thing is, there's a
were these games out of season or were they in season?
No, these were like the proper Premier League season running, Darren. What they did early doors was you'd have a couple of trial games just to see how things go, which I think is a fantastic idea, because I can assure you there's a big gulf between Championship and Premier League, and there's a big gulf between Championship, League One and League Two. And like there is in every league you move up to, it's another level.
Can I ask you very quickly at this point, because you've just touched on it, and that was what I was going to throw at you at some point, was when you go from Championship level up to Premier League level, what would you say is the biggest difference that you notice?
I always put it into an aquarium. Right? You're almost, when you walk into an aquarium, you go over the little bridge and you see the little fish. I class that as grassroots because that's nice. You go, brilliant, I've learnt my trade in there. But everybody wants to go to see the big fish at the end. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's like at the Premier League, where you're in a goldfish bowl. You can't do anything without anybody knowing, without TV coverage. Any decision you make is scrutinised a little bit more than it is at lower division games, because of how big the Premier League is, and that's no different to any other top league in the world. I'm sure if you go to Holland or you go to Belgium or France or Spain, I am sure that their top level officials are scrutinised exactly the same way as we are here in the Premier League. So it certainly is, Dan, and it's another game where you go, I've got to hit the ground running, and I've got to make sure that I'm on the money. And the difference, I think, the biggest thing for me was coming through the system was you had to be at your best every game. You had to be ready, physically ready, mentally ready, and fully prepared to take on your job.
Can I ask you about a week in between games, a sort of typical training week?
Yeah, tough one, that. Mondays, it was always S&C. I always did strength and conditioning on a Monday. So that would be gym work, core work. Spent a lot of time. I did a lot of time. People say, I'm so-called classes, those that have read some social media or some newspaper stuff, the carpet fitter. I don't know where that ever come from, because that's one thing I could never do. I never used weights. I was lucky enough to have a fitness coach that I'd worked with called Mark Hammond, who literally did all of our training in the gym on own body weight. So we never picked up weights. I was never the biggest lad to be able to pick up weights, but I always used body weight strength, which allowed me then to have more of a presence on the pitch. So that was Mondays. Tuesday was normally a HI session, unless I had a game, of course. So I'd rest Sunday, S&C Monday, really bang out a high intensity session on Tuesday. Now that could be either box to boxes, that could be diagonal, whatever that was a high intensity. Wednesday used to be like a sort of a day off if I had, or just a light day after stretching from the day before. Thursday again was another big session. That was either speed endurance, so that was maybe walk to the halfway line, sprint to the corner flag, around the pitches, depending on what was set by the sports science. Friday always used to be a quick, short, sharp session. So that was maybe 6 sprints, 6 40-metre sprints, 4 30-metre sprints, and maybe 5 10-metre sprints. Didn't last very long. It was just a quick, short burst, speed session, ready for a game on Saturday.
So are all the individual referees in the Premier League responsible for doing their own fitness, or do you all come together as one at the beginning of the week and you stay in maybe at St George's Park or wherever it is all the referees train? Is that how it works? I'm just trying to get an idea now for people that are not quite sure how it all works from the outside.
Okay. So we've all got GPS watches. We've all got our own downloads that we have to do. So we'll get sent a training program from the sports science department, and he will then see if you've got a game Tuesday. He will say, well, don't do an HI Tuesday, do it maybe on a Thursday. So he would structure your training program like they do in a club, like you do in a club. So it will be like, this is your structured plan. There you go for your week. You would download that then from your watch or your GPS unit onto your laptop. And then they were all then sent to the sports science department, who would check and monitor your training. Because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you are in a top physical condition to be able to perform at the top level. So that was always sent away, always diagnosed. And then we used to meet at St George's Park every 2 weeks. So we would either go Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on if there was games. Everyone had to be there, so assistant referees and referees, we'd all meet together. And that was done on a 2-weekly basis, where we'd watch video clips, training all together, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed that. I was never good training on my own, which is why I always went and was lucky enough to go and train with Bristol Rovers. I was lucky enough to be able to invited into there and train with those. So I always trained with the injured boys, because I never really wanted to get the ball out, because my ball skills was never that good. If I wanted to be a footballer, I would have carried on that line. But I always trained with the injured lads that ended up training harder than what the normal boys do, because they want to get back on the pitch.
Talked about injury, Lee, and we all know why you had to come off of the Premier League list in the end. But was there any niggling injuries during your career that you picked up, and how did you deal with them?
I was quite lucky, Rich, to be honest. I stayed injury-free. I was lucky that I worked with Mark Hammond, and we become really close of injury prevention, making sure we did all the right things, did all the core stability, and those were at St George's Park. Done very, very similar things that I did early doors, and I'm sure that they're benefiting from that now. But injury prevention is a massive thing. Mine wasn't. My injury was an impact injury. The surgeon asked me if I'd been in a car crash. That's how severe my injury was. Mine wasn't like picking up weights or twisting and turning. Mine was a complete impact, which unfortunately got worse and worse and worse. So I was quite, I mean, listen, we'll all get a twisted ankle or maybe a fractured eyelash, whatever we get. But at the end of the day, I was always quite lucky not to be injured and miss any games.
Yeah. Darren, we're getting close to the end here of this podcast this evening.
I was just about to say, actually, because obviously we're all in different locations, I was just about to send a little message on the chat to say, right, 20 minutes is up on this particular episode. Lee, if you're okay to stick with us, can you do another episode for us and so we can talk about the FA Cup final?
Of course I can. That's probably one that will always stick in my memory bank, and I love talking about that one. So, yeah, Darren, love to.
Excellent work. Okay, so that'll be it for this episode of the Referees World podcast with Darren Cullum, that's me, Richard Mellon, that's him, and the other bloke is Lee Probert. He's a former Premiership referee, I'll have you know. And he'll be back with us in the next episode. Don't forget, you can listen online at the website, refereesworld.co.uk, or indeed through Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
The download is complete.
This is Referees World with Darren Cullum and Richard Mellon.